take the game from a young G. I'm living that thug life. Y'all know the rules. Gotta do what you gotta do. Take true. Yeah.
Organize the OGs in the East Coast and the West Coast and the penitentiaries to come up with codes of ethics for criminals.
Yo, YouTube, what up? It's your homie Gab. I'm in the building. And this is MAKAVELI Media. Today, we're joined by a very special guest. This guy's an author. He's a producer. He's a director. He's a historian. Give it up for the one and only, Mr. John Potash. How you doing, sir?
Good. Good to be on with you, Gab.
John, let's get right into it. To me, Tupac Shakur was so much more than just a rapper. In my opinion, he was my generation's Malcolm X, Huey P. Newton, Martin Luther King, etc. Am I wrong in my assessment of who Tupac was or who he had the potential to become?
No, I agree that he was a leader, an activist leader, as well as a top rapper and actor. He was just doing things behind the scenes and doing things in a more hidden way, so people didn't realize everything he was doing. So he was the group he was involved with, New African People's Organization, when he was in his early teens, chose just to be kind of underground, to be below the limelight. They were different than they were made up of various former Black Panthers, but they decided to do things differently than the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, his mother was involved with, who were more in the limelight. And because they were attacked, the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, the New African People's Organization decided to do things more covertly. And so they were doing great activism, though, and Tupac was involved with them from his his childhood onwards. And then when he became a teenager, by the age of 17, he had been already involved in their group, the New African Panthers, and was elected national chairman of the New African Panthers at about 17 or 18 years old. So he was already a national black leader before he became a rapper, because they were active in 8 cities and they were trying to replicate the Black Panthers just without making mistakes. And so by the time he started adding wealth and fame onto that black national leadership, that's when they, of course, first started targeting him. And we know some of the incidents, but some were the Oakland police arresting him supposedly for jaywalking, but smashing his head against the curb and choking him unconscious, where people died with those police methods. And then they had a situation where they did, there was a drive-by done, we talked about, on his limousine during a big event. And then after that, there was the Marin Fest, where people shot at him for no reason, and then police just watched without intervening until Tupac, crawled under a police car, and they were worried about their car getting smashed up by the mob that was created by this group of strangers, mostly strangers. And after that, we've got the situation where he was shot at by supposedly off-duty police officers in Atlanta, and so on. And so that's just some of the incidents that, had him being targeted for his Black, Panther leadership, for his Black activist leadership. He ended up leaving the leadership of the Black Panther, New African Panthers, but he still was doing other activism on the side and behind the scenes. Like, for example, he had worked with his stepfather, Mutulu Shakur, to develop the Thug Life movement. And so as part of that, they were getting the Bloods and Crips to call peace truces between each other and turn on to activism. And that was a major threat to the powers that be, because it led loads of gangs, first through L.A., then through all of California, and then across the country, to call peace truces, and many stopped actually dealing drugs, too. And that took incredible amounts of money, many billions of dollars out of the CIA traffickers' pockets and the oligarchs' pockets, who were heavily involved in drug shipments and drug trafficking for centuries, basically. And so that's why that was probably the biggest reason he was ultimately killed by U.S. intelligence, by the oligarchs, but by U.S. intelligence on behalf of the oligarchs, I meant to say. Yeah.
Right. So I'd like to interject. So, John, so the crazy part is a lot of fans hear Tupac say Thug Life, and they just think of the hate you gave Little Memphis, fuck everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But Thug Life was actually a code of ethics for gangbangers and guys that participate in street illegal activities. So him and Matula comes up with Thug Life. Now, let's stay on that for 1 second. And your findings, you wrote the book, The FBI War on Tupac Shakur.
Mm-hmm.
How detailed was the code of ethics for the whole Thug Life movement?
Yeah, well, I have a copy of it in my film, and so you can see it. It's very long. I believe I forget how many different lines of ethics are in there, but I believe it's anywhere from like 15 to 20 different things are in there. People can look it up and see what it's all about. But so basically, the people that didn't, so when he had the leaders of different Crips and Bloods and Crips gangs come and shake hands and call a peace truce in different neighborhoods, he would make them, have them sign the Code of Thug Life first, and to abide by these ways to stop, hurting innocent people in the neighborhoods, like don't deal drugs around schools or where kids are and things like that, to lessen any casualties of the drug dealing. But, as I say, a number of gang members and whole gangs in general stopped dealing drugs because they were inspired by this. And that's what happened with the Latin Kings, that turned into the Latin King and Queen Nation, as inspired by the Thug Life movement, Tupac's Thug Life movement with the Bloods and Crips. So it spread all the way across the country to New York and spread into the Latino community. And they were kind of inspired by the Young Lords, who were the Latino Black Panthers, who one in particular, Panama Alba, I talked to about this, and I talked to the head of the Latin Kings, King Tone, or Antonio Fernandez, and interviewed him about this, all that was happening. So this was an incredible movement that was just, really changing the country, and so that's why, Tupac was so much more than just a rapper and actor. He was an incredible national, international leader, you can really say, and that's why I show in my book how the same tactics and personnel, even at times, that were used against Tupac's Black Panther extended family leadership. His mother, Afeni Shakur, was one-time leader of the Harlem Black Panthers. His godfather, Geronimo Pratt, who changed his name to Geronimo Gijaga, who was one-time head of the Los Angeles Black Panthers, etc. Same tactics used against them, and some of the same people, as I say, like a guy named Richard Held, were targeted Tupac, and so that's what happened. And so people, this was part of something called the counterintelligence program in the 1960s. And when activists raided a FBI office and stole all the documents and spread them to various underground media, but also to the mainstream press, and it got out more and more. And so because it got out and because the Senate, the Congress started investigating, the FBI officially closed COINTELPRO, counterintelligence program, down. That was targeting leftists in general, but particularly brutally targeting black activists, such as Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, as you mentioned. And so even though they officially closed it down, an insider, a COINTELPRO agent named Wes Swearingen, wrote a book in 1995 called FBI Secrets. And in there he said that he knew his fellow agents who stayed in the FBI all that time told him that they're continuing to run COINTELPRO just under different names, at least up until 1995, when they were targeting Tupac. So
exactly. Man, it's just so deep. A lot of people don't want to admit how deep it is.